I'm gonna wait for my face to pop up on YouTube, so I know that I'm definitely live. Oh, there we are. We are live. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know where you're watching from, and let me know if you've had breakfast this morning or you've had lunch, wherever you are. Today, I am privileged to be joined by Mr. Chris Goodfellow, and we're going to be covering all things content and content writing and what we need to be doing to make ourselves effective, relevant, and stand out. And also, one thing that we're going to probably speak about quite a bit in this conversation is, you know, those robots that are now trying to take over the world called ChatGPT and all these AI solutions. Are they actually our friends? Should we be utilizing them? And also, how far can we actually take these things? So without further ado, let's bring him in.
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for that emphatic intro. Really appreciate that. When it comes to the robots, I'm of the mind that we need to be as polite as possible at this point. Just hedge our bets just in case they do start to take over. So whenever I'm in ChatGPT, I'm like, hi, how you doing? How was your afternoon? And then I do my bit.
Do you know what? The other day, I was, because Richard literally says the same thing as well. Like, you better make friends with them now, and then later on, if anything does happen and they start to take over the world, they will remember your email address. They will remember your date of birth. So they know that that guy that lives at that address, he said hi, he said hello, he said I love you. So yeah, these are the hacks that we need to be actually implementing right now in case the aliens and the robots do take over. But one thing that I always like to start off with, Chris, is, have you had breakfast today, and what did you have?
Just a bowl of cereal, Jacob. Nothing too exciting.
What
some
sort
Rice
of cereal?
Krispies. I eat breakfast with my young kids though, so it's more a job of corralling them to do stuff than actually feeding myself.
Okay. And the most important question of today, was it Kellogg's or was it the other stuff? Okay, that's fine. Just to give a bit of context and a bit of background about who you are, Chris, can you tell everyone who you are so that we know that you're actually
sure. So my name's Christopher Goodfellow. I'm the founder of a company called Inkwell. We're a content marketing agency. So we write around kind of 40 to 50,000 words a month, and we work for a really wide range of clients. We do a little bit of work for UKBF. We also work for government bodies like Innovate UK and Be the Business, and some corporations like PwC and Sage and stuff like that. And we're based over here in Bristol.
And why are you on this conversation today? Why do we need to listen to you?
Yeah, so hopefully I can help you improve the investment that you're making into content marketing. So I think everyone knows that written content should be, one of the channels they're looking at or one of the channels they're investing in. Hopefully I can distill down some of the stuff we've learned over the last 5 years building this business, and help you improve the way you're approaching it and get more from your investment.
Let's get right to it. What is content marketing? What does that look like?
So in my mind, it's all, we're going to be talking specifically about written content. So, we're talking blogs, guides, case studies, things like that. And we're creating that stuff to market our business, right? So it's a channel that's part of your marketing mix, along with perhaps what you do on social, email, and so on.
And why do you believe, especially in the day and age that we are in now, why is content marketing alongside the other maybe flashy things that people are used to, such as your socials and your commercials? Why is content marketing still something that should be taken seriously?
So it's going to do two main things for you, and I'll get into each of the things in a bit more detail. So the first thing it's going to do is generate awareness. Lots of people are finding businesses through TikTok, through Instagram, whatever. But the reality is that, Google is still the gateway to the internet. So getting content, getting pages on your website to rank on Google is always going to be a key channel for generating awareness for your business. There's also a high level of intent there. Like, I love TikTok and I love how quickly you can build a channel, but people aren't there to be sold to, and it's hard to make them make the jump from, say, TikTok to your website, right? Whereas when somebody goes on Google, they have a very specific intent. They're probably searching for information about something they want to buy when they find your website. So they are much further down the marketing funnel. So number one, it's going to help you. Number two is it's going to help you build trust and authority. So what I mean by that is, if you share really useful advice through your content, that will endear your audience to you. You're giving them value, and you're giving them kind of like a sample of your expertise, and therefore they're more likely to trust you. Now, the degree to which generating awareness and building trust and authority are important to your marketing mix, so I would say they're important to everybody, but the degree to which content plays a role will kind of vary depending on what sector you're in. So to give you an example, like, most people find accountants through recommendations, or they might do a Google search. But when it comes to a professional service like accounting, trust is really important. So having some helpful content on there that your audience can relate to just builds up that trust around your offering before they maybe book a call with you or approach you via email.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, especially the example you just used there about like a professional service such as an accountant. One thing that we're going to cover in this conversation, I like to play a game called the persona game, where I give you different personas and also what those particular personas should be doing or could be doing to elevate what they're doing with their content marketing and their content writing. But yeah, we'll come to that when it's the time. So why is content writing important in businesses in today's digital age?
Yeah, so it really goes back to those two things of kind of generating awareness and building trust and authority. So if you think about, I love that we get into personas, like such an important part of your marketing and getting it right and knowing where to make your investment. But if you think about like your customers' buying journey, and indeed the way you buy things, what normally happens now is you have several touch points with the brand, whether it's B2C or B2B, you have lots of touch points with the brand, the company, before you actually buy something. And if you think back through a few of your own journeys to buying something, like, okay, this is pretty niche, but yesterday I was looking to buy a ton of topsoil and a ton of wood chip for my garden landscaping project, right? So I'm going to be looking around for advice on them. I might go on YouTube, learn how to do the project. I might go on Google and look for like local suppliers. I might read the advice and specifications on their websites. So you can already see how there's lots of different touch points in those marketing journeys. And content can be a critical one in those, because it's just a way to convey, it's a really useful information format. Google understands it, and it just allows you to make sure you've got that complete buying funnel. So you're moving people from stuff that's more about awareness, like social media, through to consideration in your content marketing, when they're actually considering making a purchase.
Yeah. And going back to, you made the point about TikTok before in regards to no one's really going to, especially for your traditional services or your professional services, such as like an accountant, people likely may not make a decision of, I'm going to use that accountant based off a TikTok video, but it's the information and the insight that is conveyed by that professional service that will push somebody to become a client of theirs. How can people, with what you just said in your first answer, how can people utilize the content writing in, let's say, in a TikTok post? What is the effectiveness of having the right words, having the right messaging in a particular, in a social media
That's
post?
a good point. So when we think of kind of tone of voice, we think of that as something that goes across your whole brand. And I mean everything from like email copy to social copy to articles to product descriptions to the emails, the personal emails you write. Like, if you can get a really strong brand voice, a real like strong tone of voice that really resonates with your audience, it really helps, first of all, build trust because it's consistent and it resonates. And it also helps massively with conversion. So if you do that heavy lifting in terms of, when you're coming up with your brand identity and you're kind of saying, this is the imagery we're going to use, this is the logo. If you do that work around tone of voice, that's going to help you with your writing, your social posts and everything else as well. So I do recommend having that stuff in your brand guidelines. And again, yeah, it's about that consistency. So we might write in a tiny bit of a different way for, say, an article on UKBF versus a TikTok description, because they're being used in slightly different ways, but our tone of voice and brand voice, whatever you want to call it, should be really consistent throughout. And that's what's going to get you conversion.
That's really insightful to know. Really, really insightful to know. Can you explain the role that content writing plays in establishing brand identity?
Yeah, so that is, just sort of builds quite nicely on the last comment there about kind of the consistency. So when you're trying to build trust and authority in a space, it is about getting that consistent tone of voice, and content can do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. So if you know the kind of challenges you're tackling in articles and you know how you're writing them and the tone of voice, then that sort of builds out your brand identity. And it comes back to the thing again of like touch points with a brand, right? Like if you're seeing their TikTok and then you're jumping to their website and then maybe you're watching one of their longer like interviews on YouTube, if it's really consistent throughout, that's where the trust comes in, and that's where all of those points, rather than sort of adding individual weight to your marketing efforts, kind of come together and really like propel you forwards. It is that kind of getting that brand identity across all of it. With the content as well, like you can get really creative. So I know we're going to do personas in a bit, but I was thinking like, if there's, say you're like a Cornwall-based brand that manufactures baseball caps or something like that, you might do a lot of like content very specifically about what you offer, but you also might like build out content that speaks to your brand values, but isn't, and resonates with your customers, but isn't like bang on about your product. So you might do some stuff around kind of like cleaning, like, surfing culture or hikes in certain areas, or just building out content that's like really interesting to your audience and is like very top of funnel, speaks to your brand. And then naturally you're getting people into your community and getting them into your marketing funnel to eventually buy whatever your product is.
Yeah, no, that's really well explained and broken down, especially when it comes to focusing in particular areas. Like you said, if you're from Cornwall, doing something unique to that particular area, that high level stuff that you initially put out there, when people are able to see it on your touch points, your socials, your emails, your even if you've got imagery external that you're doing in newspapers, having that consistency, it really, really drives that identity even further. How can effective content writing help businesses attract and retain customers?
Yeah, so let's do attract first. And I think it's useful, we talked about personas, but it's also useful to think about the differentiation between B2C, so business to consumer. So if you're selling a product direct to the end user versus B2B, which is obviously business to business. So business to business, the sales cycles tend to be a little bit longer. So for my business, we might be chatting to a client for 6 months or 8 months before they actually buy anything. And what I'm doing with content in that sales cycle is I'm giving them examples, I'm giving them case studies, so I'm not just I'm going to give you the big all that about what we can do for you as a business, but I'm going to give you a case study and say, look, we've done it for somebody very similar and this is the impact they had. So I'm going to use that case study as a way to move that sale forwards. I'm also going to create content that gives me an excuse to get in touch with people, right? So they could be in the sales process, or they could be a company that I've identified that I want to talk to. And I'm going to use this piece of content to give them some value that hopefully allows me to then get a call, right? Because if I'm just asking for a call and saying, I need 30 minutes of your time because I want to get some of your money, like that's a tough sell. Whereas if I'm like, oh, I know you work in this space, we actually did a report on your customers and here's something really useful, I'd love to talk you through it, that's a bit of a softer sell and hopefully you can get a call. So in the B2B sales cycle, I'm looking for sales for content that's going to support my sales cycle. For B2C, it's similar, but it's kind of immediate and self-serve. So we were talking about like streaming platforms before before we went live. So we're on Restream right now. We talked about Riverside and a few others. Now, if I'm shopping around for a streaming platform, I'm going to be thinking about the exact use cases I have, and I'm going to be looking at those features and whether the platforms have them and whether they're good at them. So there's lots of content you can fill in there to be like, how does Restream allow me to go on multiple platforms at once, or get guests to stream on their platforms as well. So slightly different functions, B2B and B2C, but again, you're just building content around sales and marketing funnels to get people to go through and buy stuff.
Yeah. What I'm getting from you here is that one way that content writing particularly can be utilized is if it solves an issue. If it solves an issue, somebody may have an issue that they didn't even know they had. And if you've got that content there ready to answer it, it makes you look like you know what you're talking about. Even if you know what you're talking about, but because you've already answered or given value in a way that the person wasn't even looking for, or took that person to another level of thinking, this is very, very insightful. That can, in a way, push that person to become a customer. And also, this person gave me free value. What else does this person have to offer?
This is a number one thing. So if you take one thing away from this webinar, is the point that Jacob just made there. And that's that our content needs to answer our audience's challenges, right? So it's the challenges they have when they're, so say you're like a fitness coach, what is the challenge around them getting their lifestyle fitness wise to where they want it to be? If you're selling a baseball cap, like what are the things there that they need to figure out? Like if you know your audience's challenges and you create content around them, that's the most powerful thing. And the way to do that, like you can do all the SEO research in the world, and that's really important. But the way to do that is to listen to your customer, is to use the conversations you have with your customer to generate ideas, right? So if you find that you keep coming up with the customers keep asking you the same question, like, I'm trying to figure out how to stream my webinar in this particular way. If you've heard that 3 or 4 times, that should set off an alarm bell that that's a great piece of content, a great idea for you to develop. And that could be a piece of content that you develop into an article, a YouTube video, or both, or a mixture, or whatever. But always, always, always start with those audience challenges.
Yeah. So basically looking for pain points and seeing how you can bring a solution to that pain point. That's really, really key. Really, really key. Thank you for that, Chris. So next question. In what ways can content writing impact search engine optimization? So impact SEO and website traffic.
Yeah. So written content obviously is really, really important for SEO. It's the primary format that we use. And again, you're kind of doing the process that we were just talking through. You're looking for customer challenges, but in SEO terms, they're expressed as like keywords or search terms that people are using. So I mentioned about finding topsoil that can be delivered in Bristol or whatever. I'm going to put a couple of searches into Google, and you're building content around kind of intent that your audience has. So some of that is like kind of more top of funnel. So they just generally, maybe on the fitness example, maybe they want to have like a healthier lifestyle. Maybe they're searching for content around kind of building, getting into running for the first time. Some of it might be lower down the marketing funnel, so they're closer to buying your services, and that might be more around like, how do I find a fitness coach in Bristol or something like that. So written content is for SEO purposes is trying to answer specific keywords. And then again, there's lots of advice there on how to do that research and find those keyword terms, but you always want to sense check it with, what your customers are telling you, how they're finding your business, the kind of questions they're asking and stuff like that.
And I guess to piggyback off what you just said as well, and using TikTok as an example, TikTok is now heavily going into search. So, for example, I have family members, if they want to know how to do stuff, they go on TikTok to ask. Back in the day, well, I still do it now, I go to YouTube to ask these things, to look for stuff. So having the right keywords, not just in your website, but also in your copy for your social posts, and also copy for any video content that you've got out there, is really, really important. And as Chris just said, how do you identify these keywords? There are some platforms, which I'm sure Chris would share some of these platforms that you can find these keywords, but actually listening to the language and some of the words that your customers are saying, or sentences and phrases that they're saying, and strategically piecing those things into your content. And I'm sure any wise marketeer would say to you, trial and error, trial and test, because it's only through trialing and testing that you actually know what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's like always that thing of like, put yourself in your customer's shoes. Like, I think sometimes when we run a business, you're so in the weeds of your service, of your particular thing, that sometimes you need to take that mental step and be like, actually, I need to step back. Like, how would I search for this product or service? Where would I go? What would I look for? Having those conversations and just kind of taking that little step back, because otherwise you could just be so in the weeds of your business, you sort of forget how people actually find and discover and learn about you.
Yeah. Moving on to my next question. How can businesses create a content strategy that aligns with their overall marketing goals?
Yeah, so a lot of this is around kind of personas and what your marketing goals are. So I think what we're always, for any business of whatever size, you're trying to come up with a sort of package of marketing activity, right? And you might like, say I don't know, like you offer yoga classes in a certain area, say like yoga classes in Northampton or something. That's a very localized service. So you might actually decide that I'm going to have a few helpful blogs on my website, but really I'm going to do like community work and maybe do like referral schemes and things like that. A business that's maybe selling yoga courses online might have a very different package in terms of what their always on marketing activity is. So to try and answer your question a bit more specifically, I think it's about doing that foundational work of saying kind of who are my personas, who am I like targeting as a business, where are they hanging out, like what channels are going to work for me, and one of those channels is probably going to be content marketing, and then how much effort am I going to put into each channel to get where I need to be. And the answers to those questions are going to be very different for each business, but just make sure you do that groundwork and try to avoid that thing of like just doing every channel because you heard it's the thing, or it just is there for you. Better off picking your kind of 2 key channels, going hard with them, 2 or 3 key channels, going hard with them, and just kind of maintaining the others so that you can actually get some scale.
Yeah. Let's play the persona game, Chris. So I am a gardener called Franklin, right? And I want to target my audience that I would like to reach out to are, let's say, old folks' homes or football stadiums. Those are the 2 that I want to reach. I don't know why old folks' homes or football stadiums. What do I, Franklin the gardener, where do I begin? What do I need to be focusing on when it comes to content writing and
so I'm going to
marketing?
probably say something. I'm going to take this like a little bit out of content marketing for a second. Like, I think sometimes, again, you get this trap of like, I can do it marketing wise. Sorry about the barking dogs, everyone. I can do it marketing wise, so I should. TikTok's blown up. Let's go on it. I need loads of SEO. You know, I meet a lot of early stage founders who think they need to go really hard on SEO when they haven't kind of got their product market fit yet. That's not necessarily a bad idea, but it's like, where are your customers really, and where's your energy? So if I'm trying to target, I'm garden services, so I'm very location dependent. And then I'm maybe dealing with, you said like OAPs there or something, or like older people gardening services. Because I'm location dependent, like probably stuff like flyers is really helpful, right? I could just go flyer the people with the gardens that meet my requirements. They probably have to be in a certain area in terms of like wealth to afford a service like that. So when it comes to content marketing, I would just make sure that I was kind of, I had some of those useful articles that answer their challenges, and kind of I had content going out regularly, because that will help with my SEO over time in case they go to Google and be like, can I get gardening in Bristol or whatever. But I know actually my key channels are very like location based, and stuff like flyering and referrals are going to be way more powerful. Does that make sense? So content will still play a role, but I suggest the sort of more like boots on the ground stuff will pay off better for that sort of business.
Okay, I guess I picked a wrong.
No, not wrong.
I guess Franklin the gardener. Okay, let's look at. I am Jacob, the marketeer, and I'm starting off my agency, videography agency, photography agency, and I want to reach everyone. I want to make videos, wedding videos, corporate videos. What sort of thing should I be doing?
So let's ignore the kind of everyone, if that's okay. We'll just do wedding and corporates. So actually there are two use cases that will have a very specific set of challenges, right? So when it comes to video for your wedding, there's probably you want to see some case studies for sure. So you want to see examples of other wedding videos, because there's a lot of trust there. You only get that videographer for one day to do one thing, and it's the best day of your life. So I'd want to see some good case studies on that website. And then I'd also want to see some like just helpful creative things. We're probably, when we plan our weddings, are thinking about like, how do I make it really special? Is it cupcakes instead of a wedding cake? Is it using some antique venue, whatever? So is there something you can do kind of wedding tips around video, so you might want to come up with some free advice articles of just stuff that they can implement film wise. Like maybe it's how to set up a booth for people to do videos, and rather than have a wedding book, you have a wedding kind of collection of videos from a tripoded camera or something like that, right? So for the wedding one, it would be case studies and maybe some creative stuff. And then the corporate one, there's lots of people that will want to use video in corporates, but you really got to narrow that persona down and kind of say like, what's the trigger for them getting video, and what type of video do they want? Do they want to build if they're a larger company like a Sage, 700 employees, they're probably going to bring in whole film crews and do advert type stuff. Or are they kind of actually, you're looking for the more like scale ups, like 100 employees in your local area that you can actually go to and film at. And then you're probably doing SEO content around those very specific things. So looking for people in certain sectors with certain challenges in an area. So a lot of this stuff is about, it can feel a bit overwhelming when you can write about anything, but you start to niche it down to them and their specific challenges.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good. I've got off the back of that, we've got a question in the chat here that says, how do you perform better in the most competitive industry when it comes to content marketing?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I think, a lot of the ways I've been answering these questions today are very much about kind of like, UKBF is for small businesses, and therefore I'm kind of giving you answers that are kind of targeted at really micro businesses. Some of the clients we work with are in spaces that are like really, really competitive, and the briefs that you get for articles in those spaces for search terms that are like front of tail, really, really hard to rank for. There's a huge amount of thought and research that goes into what articles should include. I think when you're at the entry level, you're very much get a good customer challenge, speak in the voice of your customer, be really helpful, use your expertise, and that will get you a long way. When you get into the mega competitive side of it, you are talking about having, you know, a list of 15 keywords. They've all got percentage densities against them. You've got every subtitle and title defined. You know, you've got all of that worked out before you start writing. So the briefs are really involved. And then also you're doing stuff like building what we call like content pyramids. I mean, not we, I mean, a lot of people use that phrase, which is kind of saying, if I've got one key main term that's my target, like say accounting software for small business, that's my critical page that I really want to go to. That's the very bottom of the pyramid, so an inverse pyramid like that. I'm going to build layers of content on top of that, and all the links are going to go in one direction. So effectively through my content, I'm telling Google that this is my main page, and I'm also from a user perspective kind of saying, look, here's the kind of intro stuff to the topic. Here's the stuff that's slightly more intent. Here's even more intent, and here's my actual key page where you're going to buy something. So yeah, I think the two differences when it starts to get mega competitive are thinking about the briefs on the individual articles and how much depth and research you put in, and then also the structure of your content offering as a whole gets a lot more complex. SEO is like an iceberg though, and you know, like with all marketing, you've got to kind of decide the degree to which you're going to get into that kind of nuance, because it is endless. You know, this is full-time. This is a full-time job for lots of people.
Yeah. No, you could go literally spend hours on it. We were having a conversation in the office about the ever-changing realms of the kingdom of SEO, and literally once you think you've figured something out, it's gone, it's changed. You have to start all over again. So it's tough. It's a big one.
It's tough. If I could just give, because I know, like I do a bit of mentoring, I meet a lot of like, you know, people that are starting out that get a bit overwhelmed with it, because again, you know, it's a massive iceberg of a topic, and you really can get down the rabbit hole with it, to use too many metaphors. But if you just start with that basic principle of, I'm going to solve customer challenges, so I'm going to be really useful and helpful, and provide a lot of value through my content. And I'm going to be audience led. So I'm going to write my content on, you know, based on the audience's challenges that I've validated, you know, through conversations with customers and so on. If you hit those two things, you're going to do a lot of the things that Google wants you to. And the third piece is just kind of getting the basics of understanding like how to lay out articles and stuff. So you can do it at that level, and that kind of will be fine while you build your business. You only really get into the mega in-depth stuff if you start to really scale or get into a very like competitive space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question I've got for you is, why is it important for businesses to understand their target audience when creating content?
So I think this just kind of echoes a lot of the points and stuff we've been chatting about, and that's, you know, it's about sort of effort and reward. If you really understand your target audience, you will get a lot more out of your marketing, and that's not just content writing, that's everything. So you need to understand where they are, what they care about, what their challenges are, and if you get that right, that's going to amplify any of your marketing efforts. And I think marketing in a funny way like that is kind of like when you launch a product for the first time, you are kind of looking for like that product market fit. You know, you're looking for the marketing that resonates and experimenting. And a lot of what I think about when you're starting out is kind of like, what experiments can you build? You know, what can you invest in, and how can you measure it to see what works? And it's those companies that experiment and evolve their techniques that start to get more and more out of their marketing budget.
Yeah. And I think I asked a dimension of this question at the beginning of the conversation, but can other aspects of marketing be done without content writing?
So you mean, can you run a business and just have no content marketing? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you could, like, you know, it's just that classic thing of how do people, I mean, you can run businesses without a website, right? You can run businesses, you can run businesses with no digital presence whatsoever. I mean, it's probably niche at this point in the digital age, but it's not essential. I think the reason it comes up a lot is because, you know, most people use Google to find things they want to buy. That's the reality of it. The trick is just to work out to what degree, yeah, content is part of your mix, part of your marketing mix.
Yeah, yeah. So after all the effort of putting the content together, making sure it's what your audience need and require, how do we then measure the effectiveness and the success of these efforts?
So I'll give you a couple of like key metrics. So obviously we look at page views. So that's just really simply the number of people that have looked at the article, and also combine that with dwell time. So dwell time is the average amount of time people spend reading your articles. So is anyone looking at it and do they care? And generally we're not just looking at them, we're looking at what is the trend in them. So, you know, so what articles are particularly doing well. You might find that actually, you know, an article gets slightly lower clicks, but if it's got a really high dwell time, that shows engagement, that shows your audience really cares. And then the one quick caveat, I guess, with those is, you know, there was a temptation of, you know, particularly a few years ago, people would kind of either do clickbaity stuff or they'd go a bit broader in terms of what they're writing about because their KPIs were a bit too hard on page views. So, you know, effectively they get lots of brand awareness, but if it's not the right people, who cares? So just be careful of that, but always, yeah, page views, dwell time's important. And then I think about like, what's the next step the audience takes with you? So you might be looking, you know, lots of you will be looking for maybe demo requests or people making an inquiry. So make sure you've always got that call to action on your articles and make sure it flows really naturally. So if we're taking the gardening example again, you know, book a call to discuss how to do this particular landscaping project or to get a quote for a landscaping project or something like that. So yeah, you might measure that next step. So how many people click through to go and get a quote, or maybe a softer one is you know, how many people join your email list because of content. The final thing on key metrics. So obviously from an SEO perspective, you might use a tool to like SEMrush or Ubersuggest or something to track how well you're doing in terms of keywords, or you might even just make sure you're regularly searching for those terms to kind of see how results are changing. And therefore, you know, like, are you doing well for those terms? Is stuff starting to rank? Yeah, that's the kind of key ones, I think. Well, I guess the only caveat with this, with the kind of search traffic, so you probably measure also search traffic to your website from Google or whatever, that does take time to build, and it is like a bit of a hockey stick thing. So if you're consistently writing great content, you get this really frustrating slow burn, and then it's like Google sort of flips a switch in terms of your trust, and it will just start to go upwards if you're really consistent. So it is a slow burn thing.
Yeah. So just to reiterate what you just said there, it's not an over. Can it? So in TikTok, for example, somebody can post a video and it can go viral, but then for the next couple that they post, they get not even half the views that they got the first time. When it comes to content, the trust and the consistency plays a huge part.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, consistency is key with every channel, but like content, particularly written content, it's so critical, and email as well. You know, you're building up those relationships over time. You're being consistent. You're giving Google all the right signals. You're building up backlinks, and that is, you know, when you look at like scaling a digital marketing funnel, like when like really building a business, like you're going to need written content to do that. And laying those like foundations earlier on in your business journey will really help. You know, it's hard to retroactively go and catch up on 3 years of, you know, no work and content wise, because there's no shortcut.
Yeah, I've got on literally off the back of what you just said here, we've got another audience question that says, what are the best ways to get your content out there? i.e., how do you maximize the number of subscribers to your newsletter?
Yeah, so I'd always think about whenever you're creating anything, how can you sweat that asset? So say you create like a downloadable guide because you want to capture some sales inquiries. then you might spin that guide out to 4 different blogs because you've already done the heavy lifting in terms of creating it and creating the assets for it. And then from those blogs, you might even record a couple of like quick social clips for each one, and embed them in the articles too. So it's all about thinking, actually, if I'm going to spend this time writing the article, how do I spin it out into several different things? Like we have the practice that every time we write an article, we normally write the social posts at the same time. So if you're in that headspace of, I've just written 1,000 words on this topic, it's much easier to then write like 2 LinkedIn posts and prep those up ready. So I think it's, how do you sweat the asset as much as possible? And then I think he asked a follow-up point, particularly about email. I think that's about call to action. So, making sure that often when you get to a website, they'll immediately after 10 seconds, they'll immediately give you a pop-up, like sign up to our email address. I kind of don't like that. I feel like I need, it's kind of like asking someone out when you haven't even like had a conversation with them. You kind of need to provide more value. So maybe you need to think about call to action triggers that are like, okay, if somebody spends 60 seconds on an article, I'll use opt-in monster to give them a pop-up and ask them to subscribe to the article. So think about, make sure you get clever about your call to actions when you build an email list with content, and also like how are you serving them? How much value have you provided them, right? So if they've never seen your brand before and they've just hit it from Google and you've given them a really useful 1,000-word article, you might be able to get them onto your email list, but they might not be ready to buy something straight away. Whereas if they Google something that's very specific to your product, like, how do I use Restream to do X? Then you might be able to direct the call to action straight to the purchase page. So think about where they are in your marketing funnel with the call to action.
Yeah. I hope that, I think it's Louis that asked that question. I hope that answers your question, Louis. Let us know in the chat if it does. So I've got a few more questions before we get to talking about the robots again. What are some of the common mistakes that businesses make when it comes to content writing? And how can these things
so I'll
be
just
avoided?
give you 2. So I did make some notes on this prior to the call. So one is the thing that comes up time and time again. So make sure you're starting with your customers and you're writing stuff that's really, really valuable to them. The number one way to validate this is talk to them. It's the same when you're validating a business idea. If there's stuff that's coming up in your sales calls all the time, if there's stuff that customers are asking about when your market stall, that's a really good signal that it's going to be great content. It's going to be great content. So make sure you start with your customers. The mistake I sometimes see is people feel obliged to write for this and that without kind of validating those content ideas. The second thing is make, this goes for all marketing, is like make the volume you're doing manageable and build a routine for it, right? So if you've decided that the role content plays for you and the investment that you're going to put into it validates 2 articles a month, right? So say you're a local accountant with 5 employees, you're going to write these 2 articles. They're going to help you keep active on social. They're going to give you material to share. They're going to help you over time build SEO. Just pick a manageable amount volume-wise, and then build that routine around when you're doing it. So is it that you book in half a day? Is it that you outsource it to a freelancer and just do the edits? Build those processes around your content. So I think because the mistake sometimes there is, again, that thing of overwhelm. Like people think, I've got to hit these 20 search terms or 50 search terms that some agency's given me, and I've got to go and do X amount of content in the next 3 weeks. Like, just make it manageable, get that routine that's sustainable. Yeah.
That's good. We've got another audience question here. How do you build, let me get it here. How do you build a new business? Can't get my words out. How do you build new business socials or mailing lists from 0?
So it's basically, how do you build an email list from 0?
Yeah, from ground zero.
I think we have an article about this on UKBF, so definitely look that up. But yeah, you're going to have to just put in the hard yards of creating something really, really valuable, and like just putting it out there as much as possible. Say, make sure that when you start your email, when you start that very at the beginning of the process, like really put the thought into like why do people care about opening this email? Like sometimes I find people are building lists with emails that are just a bit like, we've created some content, so here you go. Like, is it actually that you collate, really cool events in your space? Is it that you just do a text-based email that provides like a helpful tip and doesn't even ask anything of, doesn't ask the consumer to click anywhere? So just think about, like what can you do differently? What will email work? What will work in your space? And then a few things that can help you scale. So obviously use call to actions well, like we talked about before. So get them all over your content. Make sure you're talking about your list on social. And then also like, is there anyone that can help promote your email? So when you're really at the very like ground zero, like, you might just be reaching out to your network, literally one by one, or with some kind of copy paste message where you're just asking them if you can subscribe them, or DMing people that follow you a little like, thanks for following me, we'd love it if you join me on the email. So when you're building that email right from scratch, it does tend to be those hard yards of like good outreach, and just make sure, like I say, you've got that solid base of like, I am creating something really valuable and people will care about it.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question, In-Step Adventures. As Chris said, there is an article on that on UKBF, UK Business Forums. So just don't know if we can get that and put.
So are they Insta Adventures? Are they like what do they offer? So maybe I can make it more specific.
Yeah, In-Step Adventures. You've got a very, very good deal here. Chris is about to give you some personal tips. What offering do you have? What service do you provide, or what are you looking to do? If I was you, I'm going to give you 1 minute to take advantage of this opportunity, or else I will move on. They took advantage. In-Step Adventures is a tour operator.
Okay, look, there's so many great opportunities for content there and community building. So tour operators, what I'd be thinking about is like, tour is like if you're booking a tour, it's like a passion thing. So is there something in your kind of ethos that really unites your community? Like I remember, I think her name was Bex. She was, I'll remember her business name in a minute. But her whole thing was around solo female travelers, and actually like using her own experience to like kind of build trips for people that were like safe and could empower people that like maybe didn't feel safe traveling alone. And that was like reflective of her own experience. And she built an amazing newsletter list and social accounts all around like putting herself front and center and her own experiences. And so you could think of like, okay, what's my particular ethos, or what's within my brand that I can leverage content creation wise, and then you'll maybe like thinking, okay, well, like there are loads of like inspirational gems I could drop in people's inbox that like might want to book trips. So it might just be like, here's a 24-hour adventure you can do this weekend, or here's a 5-hour walk you can do, or like, I don't know exactly your product set, but like what around that can you give them that's kind of like, not like buy this tour right now, but kind of like, I know you're also interested in hiking, or I know you're also interested in canoeing and stuff like that. And probably actually, like, I imagine the reason you're in that business is that you love doing tours yourself. So you can get a lot of that from your own kind of hobbies and interests, and try and get that excitement into the content. Hopefully that helps a little bit. You can always reach out by email as well if you like. That goes for anyone on this call. Not email, sorry, LinkedIn's the easiest. Add me on LinkedIn if you want to add a follow-up.
I quickly took that back. Yeah. Let me, In-Step Adventures, let me know in the chat if that helps you out at all.
Feel free to say no.
For that, Chris. You're not going to get that anywhere else. You're not going to get that anywhere else, In-Step. We'll sure use that advice. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. They took that on board. So, now to the new development of where we are right now, in the age that we are right now, where people's attentions are glued to screens, glued to phones, and the rise of the software robots, things like ChatGPT and other AI tools, which also create content for people, or can be utilized to create material for people and their brands and their businesses. I wanted to ask you, how can businesses stay current and adapt to the changes in content writing and the trends and some of the best practices?
Yeah, so AI is massive at the moment. Like, I can't load any social media network without hearing about it. We're talking about it every day in the office. It is one of the it is the biggest change to marketing that's probably happened since the invention of the internet and kind of everyone going digital. Like, it's that big, and we are, in spite of like the amazing things we've already seen, we're right at the beginning of this. Like, I always think of, like, you know, the first game was like Pong, and it only took like 20 years for us to be, you know, have like full 3D worlds. So, you know, this is going to go crazy, and it's really daunting. You know, for me as an agency owner, I think we're all trying to figure out, like, what does this mean for us? So how can you stay up to date with that? I think when I think long term about it, what I'm thinking about is that all of these tools are just going to make creating content way easier, way cheaper, and therefore there's going to be loads more content out there, right? So really getting good at the kind of the storytelling aspects of content and building personal brands is going to give you like something to hang your hat on, right? And even as the volume of content like rapidly increases, so that's like going back to your fundamentals, making sure you're good at that. So storytelling, building personal brands, critical. Doesn't matter what platform you're on, doesn't matter what tools you're using. Now, how do you keep current with all the developments? There is a real risk of overwhelm here, because yeah, every single day there's a new AI tool that looks revolutionary or a new hack. So I would more think about, like, what are the actual like use cases for me? Like, what is it going to help me with? Ask around your peers, you know, do a little bit of reading, and just find like a couple of like very specific things it's going to help you with, and learn to do those. Right? Don't do that thing of like worrying every day that you're not up with the latest tool or whatever. Just find the little things you can implement to help you. So to give you some examples, for us, like ChatGPT, we're never going to write full articles on it, and I don't recommend that you do. There's some questions around Google there, but there's also questions around kind of expertise and the value you're providing. But what it is really good at is basically, like, to me, ChatGPT is like a really good intern. You know, there's kind of that level of like, they will do basic research for you really fast. Well, ChatGPT will do it really fast to that kind of quality. At the end of the day, it's just being fed the whole of the internet, right? And the whole of the internet isn't that great a place. So the stuff that does work, though, so like if you're experimenting around kind of ideas for article structure or article ideas, so maybe you've identified a particular challenge that you're going to write about for your audience, you can jump on ChatGPT and start to quiz it about that challenge, and it will hopefully develop possible sections for you, and just have a conversation with it. Just knowing that you need that level of expertise to qualify the advice and ask the right follow-up questions. So it's not going to replace people, because it doesn't have that qualifying expertise. If I chuck a challenge into Google, it will spit out into ChatGPT, it will spit out 10 ideas. I'm probably immediately know that 4 won't work, and then I'll build out an extra 2 and I'll keep talking to it, right? So use it to experiment with what you include in articles, article ideas, article structures. The second one, which I'm both terrified and excited about, is you can actually write quite good social posts based on article summaries, things like that, right? So if you feed it like an article that you've written, it will turn it into a LinkedIn post and so on. Now, the art to doing that is all around prompts. So people talk about prompt engineering, and the reason is it just like, it can 10 times the value you get out of ChatGPT. Like if you just practice and getting good at asking providing it detail to give you a good output. If you just say, take this article and turn it into a LinkedIn post, it will do an okay job, but it won't really sound like your brand. What we mess around with is like feeding it different like tone of stuff around tone of voice, being very specific about our audience and really refining the output. And then when it spits out a post for you, then asking it to refine it further. So that was quite a lot. I guess what I'd say in summary is, yeah, there's big changes coming. Make sure you got your fundamentals right, storytelling, personal brand, and then find some really simple use cases for AI that's going to help you.
No, that's really insightful, especially what you just said about making sure that your fundamentals are sound, because from that point you can. These robots are just additions. They're there to complement what you're already doing. We can't rely on the robot to do the job for us because, like you just said there, they're basically taking the information from the internet. The internet, I'm sure there's parts of the internet that will say 1 + 1 = 1, right? The internet's not always right. So you have to kind of take everything with a pinch of salt. But once the fundamentals are there and they're sound, utilizing these platforms for efficiency purposes especially is really handy. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure from the interactions and the questions that the audience have also brought, they've found this useful as well. In closing, Chris, is there any final remarks? What are the top 3 tips about content writing that people need to do, or else they can do one?
Oh, right, put me right on the spot there. I'm going to give you okay. I'm going to give you, okay, I got it. I got my 3. Number 1, and this really recounts a lot of our conversation earlier. First thing you need to remember is know your customer, right? You got to know exactly who you're targeting. You've got to know why they're buying your product. You've got to know like what social platforms are, and really like work hard on those personas, because that's what will allow you to make your content marketing really resonate with them and really be valuable for your business in terms of like getting them to buy stuff. The second is, we're doing this content to create value, right? The reason you build trust, the reason you move through people's marketing funnels is that they're giving you value, right? So just create really useful, helpful stuff in your content, just like you would if you were having a conversation with someone. Third, make sure you're sense checking like what content marketing is doing for your business in terms of goals. Like, how is it helping? You won't be able to measure all of it. Some of that will be kind of intangible sort of brand stuff, or trust building in the sales cycle, but have clear goals and a system to deliver on those goals. That's me. That's my 3.
You heard those 3 things there? Yep. I didn't even give him time to prep for that. I just threw it at him, and then he was able to. So Chris was just like ChatGPT there. I fed him something, and he gave me what we needed. On that note, I just really want to thank you once again for your time and your expertise on this particular subject, Chris. If people want to get in hold of you, get in touch with you,
so LinkedIn's the best bet. So just add me on LinkedIn, Chris Goodfellow, Inkwell. I'm sure you'll be able to find me pretty easily. What helps with that is if you've got like kind of a specific question. So if you sort of say, what should I do with my content marketing strategy? Like that's huge, and I don't really have any context. So try and be a bit specific if you like about what you're asking. And I'll do my best to help. I do also do like a bit of mentoring through there too. So, if that conversation develops and we end up having like a half an hour call or something, that's great. Try to do a bit of that every week. So yeah, just reach out on LinkedIn. Let me know what you're working on and how I can help.
That's great. So if you've got any further questions that you want to ask Chris, because we know a lot of people may not have the ability to tune in live, but I'm sure people later on may have some questions like the people watching now did. But yeah, thank you for your time once again, Chris. And just to give a few people information about who we are as UKBF, if you're tuning in for the first time. UK Business Forums, UKBF, it's the largest online community of small and micro business owners in the UK. Whether you're starting off in your business journey, whether you're in the mid stages of your business journey, or whether you're crushing it, killing it, you're a billionaire. All these different people are within the UKBF community, and it's all about support, peer-to-peer support. If you've got questions, if you've got queries, and you need some specific answers to them, there are people in that industry that are on our platform that will be able to offer some help and guidance in that scenario. And if you've got expertise yourself and you're looking for a community to give back into, we'd love to have you on board in our community. It's a free community to join. It's a free platform to use. Head over to ukbf.co.uk. It's free to sign up. And we've got some really, really cool stuff coming up for small businesses. So be sure to stay tuned and locked in, especially to our upcoming webinars as well. So once again, just want to say thank you to Mr. Chris Goodfellow from Inkwell, all the way down in sunny Bristol. Have a great day, guys, and have a wonderful time, Chris.
Lovely. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
Later.